He told the judge I was unfit to parent and then smiled at me. I was standing in a courtroom when my husband told the judge I was unfit to parent. He said it calmly, like reading from a script, and then he looked at me and smiled. We'd been fighting for months, but I never thought he'd weaponize our child like that. We were married 8 years and had a 5-year-old who knew both of us as mom and dad. The conflict started small and stupid arguments about money, late nights at work, him closing doors when I tried to talk. My friends said every marriage has rough patches. My parents said try counseling. I went, then things got worse fast. He started flipping the script in front of our son, making jokes about my anxiety and saying I was forgetful with appointments. First crack came when he canceled our son's pediatrician appointment and told me he already rescheduled it at a different clinic. I showed up and the receptionist treated me like I was an intruder, saying only the person on file could bring the child. He quietly changed the emergency contacts on our son's school account to his sister and his work number. When I asked why I didn't get an answer that made sense, he shrugged and said he'd been worried I was unreliable. Things started getting worse when I got pulled into a meeting at my job about concerns someone had reported. My manager told me HR had received an anonymous complaint about possible parenting issues and late pickups. I was shaken, but I thought the truth would fix it. I printed my work schedule, my attendance record, my text proving I had picked up our son on time every day. Then I found something that changed everything. I opened our shared bank app and saw transfers labeled as payment to a family court evaluator and a private investigator. There were receipts for $2,000, $500, force for consultations, all paid from his card 2 nights after an argument. I didn't know he could pay for witnesses and reports against me. I didn't know that was a thing you could buy. After that, everything blew up. He filed an emergency motion claiming I left our son unsupervised, then showed the judge photos of the living room with toys on the floor and a cup tipped over. Those photos were taken on purpose. He admitted later he asked our neighbor to snap them while our son was with a babysitter. The judge ordered temporary custody to him pending an evaluation and set supervised visits for me. For a minute, I thought the judge would see through the setup. He knew our child, he knew my job, and he knew I'm the one who takes the kid to preschool every week. It got worse when I was handed copies of his testimony in advance. He had emails where he described me as emotionally unstable and unreliable. I stared at the papers until my hands hurt. My lawyer told me to keep calm and gather evidence, but every hour felt like sand slipping away. The reality really sank in when our son was taken to live with his grandparents 3 blocks away. He packed a duffel without me. He didn't cry. He waved like we had a play date, and I didn't understand why my chest felt like it had been hollowed out. The moment that broke me was the day of the temporary hearing. He walked into the courtroom late, hair perfect, wearing a suit that fit better than any shirt he'd ever owned. He told the judge I was unfit to parent because I missed 2 therapy appointments last year and had mood instability. I sat there and listened while he lined up claims like bullets. When he finished, he turned and smiled at me. It was a slow smile, the kind someone practices in a mirror when they want to show you they won. Everything felt heavy after that. Friends called to say they were sorry. My parents texted that maybe this was for the best. My son called me from the other house and asked if I was okay. I stopped sleeping. I stopped trusting people who called themselves friends. I couldn't stop replaying that smile and wondering how it had felt so easy for him to lie. It took time for my brain to catch up with my anger. But something in me finally snapped into place the night I found his planner. I was looking for legal papers and the planner fell out from under a stack of receipts in his desk. He'd left it open to a week last fall with messy notes and one line circled. Meet evaluator payment, photos scheduled. I read everything. Appointments, names, phone numbers, a restaurant, meeting with someone listed as court witness. I came up with a new plan that night. I made copies of that planner, screenshotted bank transfers, saved text messages he'd sent to his friend about needing a clean break. I called the private investigator listed on the receipts and left a message asking what he had been hired to do. He called me back within an hour and said he'd been hired to document parenting concerns and provide a report to the family court. I went to the neighbor who had taken the photos. She admitted my husband had asked her to take pictures while the sitter was inside and then send them to him. I took all of it to my lawyer. We compiled the planner, the receipts, the investigator confirmation, the neighbor's text admitting the photos, and a timeline showing he changed emergency contacts. The week before the final hearing, he tried to get me to settle. He offered supervised visitation only and said I could see my son on weekends if I agreed to no social media posts about the case. I refused. I wanted my son home. I wanted him to know me as his mother, not someone who had to sneak around visiting hours. I was ready to fight, even if I had nothing left. The real showdown happened in the courtroom when my lawyer asked the judge to admit new evidence. My husband tried to object, but the planner and bank records were hard to call fabrication. My lawyer called the private investigator to testify, and the neighbor too. They said the photos were staged, and the investigator said he was hired to build a case based on alleged neglect. The judge looked through the planner, then at my husband. The smile he'd worn earlier froze like someone had turned off a light. He chose his words carefully as he tried to explain. He said he genuinely believed the reports, that he was acting out of concern, that maybe he had made mistakes in how he handled it. I had receipts that said otherwise. There was a wire from his account to the evaluator the week before he filed the emergency motion. My lawyer stood up and said he had been paid to produce a favorable report, which meant the evaluator's neutrality was compromised. The courtroom got quiet. The judge ordered the evaluator to produce raw notes and metadata and then asked for a continuance to review it. He also asked for a third-party review because payments to an evaluator could not be ignored. I watched my husband shrink as the judge read the charges against the evaluator and noted the conflicts of interest. He no longer had a practiced smile, only a skin-tight expression that didn't reach his eyes. The judge gave me temporary primary custody while the review was ongoing. My son came home with me that night and fell asleep on my chest like nothing had ever happened. That didn't erase the year of things he'd said or the ways my husband had made me doubt my own mind. It did feel like justice was starting to work in my favor instead of against me. Months later, the evaluator was discredited. The court found the report unreliable due to the paid contract and the chain of communications that showed bias. My husband apologized in a way that sounded like a negotiation rather than remorse. He said he was sorry for making me go through this, and then asked if we could try mediation for co-parenting. I told him mediation could be possible, but not without real change. I wanted to see proof he had stopped manipulating facts and stopped using our child as leverage. I asked for documented therapy attendance, a job, and a list of boundaries he agreed to in writing. He signed the documents because he knew the judge would make it stick if he didn't. The months after the court fight were quiet and awkward. We co-parented under the rules court ordered. And every time I felt too trusting, I checked a calendar, an email, a text. I did not forgive him quickly. I did not forget the smile he gave me in that courtroom. But my son learned to nap in his own bed again and stopped asking why he had to leave one house and go to another. The most important thing changed in small actions. He showed up on time for pickups. He did not try to coach witnesses again. He went to therapy twice a week and handed me the attendance slips. Sometimes he still tried to make a joke about my anxiety, and I would remind him of the boundaries we had. He would quiet down and step back like someone learning new rules for a game he thought he already knew. I still woke up in the middle of the night, chest tight, remembering that smile. I started seeing a therapist too, because surviving it didn't mean being healed. 1 year later, the judge closed the case. We had a co-parenting agreement that favored my primary custody and defined rules for communication and disputes. When everything was signed, my husband looked at me once more in the courtroom. He didn't smile this time. He looked tired and small. I don't know if he'll ever truly understand the damage he caused. I don't know if he'll ever be the person he pretended to be in front of the judge. My son is home most nights now. He comes into my room in the morning and sits on the edge of the bed and asks if breakfast will have pancakes. He hugs me without hesitation and calls me mom like it's the most obvious thing in the world. People ask if revenge feels sweet. It didn't. Doing the hard work, finding receipts, getting witnesses, sitting through hearings felt like reclaiming my life, not punishing him. Months after the trial, I gave a statement to my sister about boundaries and warning signs so she wouldn't let anyone gaslight her. She cried and hugged me and said she was glad I fought for our kid. I still don't know how to feel about my ex entirely, but at least my son is home, and at least the judge saw the evidence that mattered. Some days I'm fine. Other days, the memory of his calm, testimony, and smile hits me in the chest. I keep working on being the parent my son needs, and nothing his father tried to make me stop being.